There are certain UFC fighters who had an obvious weakness in their game, but over the years they have perfected their mistakes and became a well-rounded fighter. So here's 10 fighters who have fixed their weaknesses. Number 10. Edson Barboza came a long way since getting finished by Donald Cerrone and Jamie Varner, where over the years his striking has improved leaps and bounds, where he has put together a number of spectacular finishes on his resume. One of his most notable finishes was when he knocked out Beneil Dariush with a brutal flying knee at UFC Final 106. He has used his losses to completely change his game and has become confident in his abilities. Number 9. Amanda Nunes made her way in the UFC as a wild brawler who would gas out in the later rounds. After a brutal loss to Kat Zingano at UFC 178, she made a comeback and paced herself in her fights and took her time picking her opponents apart. One of her most impressive performances was when she brutalized Miesha Tate at UFC 200 on the feet and sank in a rear naked choke to get the victory. She has improved her game so much, where right now she can fight a technical 5-round fight. Number 8. Jacare Souza had been known for his dangerous jiu-jitsu game for a very long time, where he would just wrap his opponents up in a deep submission. Since entering the UFC, we have seen him take his striking skills to a new level, where he has finished many fighters with his stand-up skills. This was seen when he stunned Derek Brunson with some heavy head kicks, eventually getting the TKO victory. Jacare Souza has become much more of an improved fighter, where he has the ability to hang with the best fighters on the feet. Number 7. Fabricio Verdun had been known to be a one-dimensional grappler who would have success in getting his hands raised with the submission. When he was released from the UFC after his knockout loss to Junior Dos Santos at UFC 90, Fabricio Verdun went back and worked extensively on his striking skills, but once he was back in the UFC, we saw major improvements with his striking skills. The performance that sticks out the most was when he finished Mark Hunt with a flying knee at UFC 180. Fabricio Verdun has fine-tuned his game, where right now he's a well-rounded fighter. Number 6. Mark Hunt has always had knockout power in his hands, but lacked the knowledge in the grappling department. This was seen in his UFC debut when he was finished by a straight armbar against Sean McCorkle at UFC 119. Since that loss, he has worked hard on his takedown defense, where right now his opponents find it difficult to take him down. He now can purely focus on just putting his hands on his opponents, and is comfortable with his takedown defense. Mark Hunt's improvements has made him into a legit contender in the weight class, and is a tough challenge for anybody. Number 5. Chad Mendes came into the UFC purely as a one-dimensional wrestler who would grind out a unanimous decision victory. After his knockout loss to Jose Aldo at UFC 142, he went back and worked on his striking skills so much, where he started to knock out fighters left, right and centre. An example of this was when he completely demolished Darren Elkins with the overhand right to get the knockout victory at UFC on Fox 7. Chad Mendes has turned himself into a dangerous striker and can give any featherweight a lot of trouble. Number 4. Kelvin Gastelum came into the UFC very young, where his game wasn't as polished as he is today. He struggled to make the welterweight limit on numerous occasions, which affected his fights. However, since moving up to the middleweight division, he has shown what he's truly capable of. He has put together a string of finishes together, and just looks like a different fighter. He was able to knock out Vitor Belfort with a heavy right hand at UFC Final 106. Kelvin Gastelum has looked better than ever at middleweight, where his performances have shown that he is a legit threat in the weight class. Number 3. Stephen Thompson came into the UFC as a dynamic striker who was hyped up to be the next big thing. After Matt Brown exposed him, showing that he didn't have no grappling skills at UFC 145, he went back and trained with Chris Weidman, improving his grappling skills. When he came back, we saw a big improvement in his performances, where he would comfortably throw his signature unorthodox strikes without the fear of being taken down. We saw this when he dismantled Johnny Hendricks by TKO at UFC Final 82. Stephen Thompson has become a well-rounded fighter over the years and is simply on a different level right now. Number 2. Alexander Gustafsson burst into the UFC and was known for his exceptional striking skills. After Phil Davis just ragdolled him with his wrestling and finished him by an anaconda choke at UFC 112, Alexander Gustafsson knew that he had to work on his grappling skills and went to train with Phil Davis. He had shown major improvements in his grappling game, where he had learned how to keep the fight on the feet. He was able to stuff John Jones' takedowns at UFC 165 and punished him on the feet. Alexander Gustafsson has taken his game to a whole new level and is definitely a world-class fighter. Number 1. TJ Dillashaw came into the UFC as a Division 1 wrestler who looked like a very promising prospect. Since working with Dwayne Ludwig over the years, he has turned himself into one of the best strikers in the bantamweight division. He has been able to just dominate the best fighters with his striking skills, where he has been able to become a 2-time UFC bantamweight champion. His most impressive performance was when he dropped Cody Garbrandt with a right hook and followed up with punches to get the TKO victory at UFC 217. TJ Dillashaw is one of the most complete fighters in the UFC and has proved time and time again why he is one of the best fighters in the world.